Welcome back. Canada has been a land of immigrants since the first European colonizers set foot here in the 16th century. Currently, there are around 300,000 new immigrants to Canada every year. So we decided to ask Bruce Sellery for a lesson on financial literacy for our new Canadians, and some of our old Canadians might just learn a thing or two as well. Hey, Bruce. Good to see you.
Hi, Tracy.
There's a lot of information you need to impart, but what is the first thing we need to understand when it comes to new Canadians?
New Canadians, new immigrants, that is a description that can have so many different dimensions. So language, you could be immigrating from the United Kingdom. It's your first language. Or you may know 5 words and the lyrics to some really great Celine Dion songs. There are immigrants who arrive with professionally recognized credentials and others who've got nothing. It hasn't transferred. Maybe they're a student. Maybe they're a refugee. And you've got a very wide spectrum in terms of the financial situation, right? Like ultra wealthy who decide they're going to come to Canada, and then people who arrive literally with the clothes on their back.
Okay, so what are some of the differences that new Canadians need to understand when it comes to money?
First off is product. There are so many products here, and they are likely products that the new Canadians didn't necessarily have in their home country. The second is culture. So if you were born and raised in Canada, you've lived here all your life, you wouldn't really notice those differences. But let's talk about retirement. So in other countries, how it works is the elder generation moves into the home of the child, and they take care of their needs throughout the last chapter of their life. Here in Canada, culturally, people save for retirement over the course of their working life, and they do that in these products like an RRSP, open up a TFSA, you've got a RIF, all those sorts of things. So a new Canadian needs to understand, there's a cultural difference here, but also there are some different products that they might not be familiar with.
Okay, well, we talk a lot about credit cards and credit scores here in Canada, but these conversations are not necessarily the same around the world.
They are not. And we are a credit card culture. It is how Canadians transact. And we rely a lot on the credit score, which is basically a mark. It's a mark. And if you're a new Canadian, you don't know you're being marked. It's kind of a bit of a missed opportunity for you to land on your feet as quickly as possible. So it's important that new Canadians get a credit card. They have 1 or 2. They pay off the minimum balance for sure every single month, and they endeavor to pay off that balance in full every single month. I moved to the U.S. Very little that was different in terms of culture, very little that was different in terms of product, but I couldn't get a credit card. So it's one of the challenges that new Canadians have is, how do I actually get a card? Because I need to build a credit score in order to one day qualify for a mortgage. And for some immigrants or for some Canadians, it's what they need to rent an apartment and get a job. So learning how credit scores work, learning that you're being marked and that you can get a better mark over time is really, really important.
Yeah, it's crucial. Yeah, now that I think about it, it really is. What about insurance, Bruce? What do we need to talk about there?
It's baffling for everybody. There's so many different things. I'll simplify it for new Canadians. If you live in a home, whether you own it or rent it, you need insurance, tenant insurance or home insurance. If you have a car, you need insurance. And if you have kids, you need life insurance. You don't need to worry about the rest of the things because there's so many different types of products. It can be confusing to figure out what's critical. The 3 that I mentioned are critical. The other thing is international money transfers. So a lot of immigrants are sending a lot of their income back to the country that they came from, and doing that efficiently and with the lowest fee possible is really, really important. The other thing I'd flag just very briefly is taxes. You need to pay your taxes on time, and this is increasingly complicated if you have assets in your former country. So you need to really do the research and follow the rules because they matter.
Oh my gosh, we shouldn't even mention taxes if we want folks to come to Canada. We don't do that here. Just come on in. They'll just say, forget it.
That's right.
There's the risk of fraud for new Canadians. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I think there's 2 things that make it an even bigger risk than for you and I. And by the way, I've been susceptible to wacky things, and I cover this stuff. First is if there's a language barrier, and second, the stakes. So what I mean by the stakes is if you're a new Canadian and you were waiting for permanent residency, when you get the phone call from the CRA that says you've done something horrible and we're going to imprison you, I'm not so fussed about that because it was like, come to my house, nothing's going to happen. But if you were a new Canadian, you might know that that's not a fraudulent call and get very, very anxious because so much is at stake in terms of your ability to live here permanently.
Listen, I've been caught. I'm born in this country. I've been caught by those robocalls thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to jail.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely traps you can fall into for sure. Let's talk about resources, because I know that you probably have a few for new Canadians that can be really helpful.
I'm going to focus on 3. Immigrant services very often have webinars, programs, sessions around personal finance, really the basics. How does the banking system work and all that? So I would start there. Second is there's this really, really great blog called Savvy New Canadians. And the author, an immigrant himself, he just blogs every single month with topics that are so resonant and relevant to new Canadians. And then the last thing I'd say is the banks. They're actually doing a really good job welcoming new immigrants in. They have special credit cards on offer. RBC has a website called arrivein.com, and there's guides and stuff that you can download. Now, know that they are doing this because they see this as a marketing opportunity. It's a potential segment for them to target, but I've read the material. It's pretty good. It's on point and can be really helpful. As much as Canadians who've been there for generations have a love-hate relationship with banks, immigrants are need to find a financial institution in which they are going to do business. And so, as you choose one, look to see how they engage with new immigrants. Many of these banks can communicate I was talking to one, they can communicate in 200 languages through a video application. That is just amazing. So if a language barrier is a big thing, finding a resource that can help you overcome that, especially in the short term as you find your footing and learn English yourself, is really, really critical. There is a lot of support out there, but it can be a really complicated part of the integration of a new Canadian into a Canadian. We love that you're here. We need to find a way to make it work for you.
Absolutely. And you know who's really helpful and supportive? You are, Bruce Sellery. Thank you so much for those tips. Oh my God, he's so helpful.